The Meeples and Miniatures podcast is sponsored by Too Fat Lardies and Coat Dance Paints, and also by the generous donations of you, the listener. Thank you to everyone for your support. The Meeples and Miniatures podcast, episode 106, Chain of Command, with co-presenter Mike Hobbs and guests Richard Clark and Nick Skinner from Too Fat Lardies. Welcome to the Meeples and Miniatures podcast. A bit of a first today. We're actually on as near live as we can get for a podcast. We are live at Lard Island with Nick and Rich from Too Fat Lardies. Hi guys.
Hi.
Hello. Hi.
And of course, this time I'm joined by Mike.
Hello.
Hello. And we've been joined at Lard Island today, and we've been playing Chain of Command, which is new skirmish level World War II rules from Too Fat Lardies. So we've had a couple of games, which amazingly I've won both of them. I think I've used up my whole... people are now beginning to not believe that I don't normally roll sixes. Because I think I've used my quota for the entire year. Please note, Rich Jones, if you're listening. We're having a roundtable discussion on Chain of Command and chat about everything to do with that, and also what we can see moving forward from Too Fat Lardies as well. So we'll start off with, so how did Chain of Command come about, Rich?
We produced Through the Mud and the Blood for our First World War rules, which dealt with games, a platoon, two platoons aside, which very much were an examination of small unit infantry tactics. I was inspired to write those by my good friend Dr. Paddy Griffith, who sadly is no longer with us. And his examination of infantry tactics on the Western Front, and basically to try and get away from the concept of the First World War simply being a mincing machine. In truth, it was an area of huge tactical development. By 1918, the type of infantry tactics you were seeing were basically what's being used today in Afghanistan. The upshot of that was that a lot of people really enjoyed those and says, we'd like to start playing this for World War II, and I put together a few notes basically to give them a bit of a conversion set to do so, and they kept going on and on about how much fun they were having doing it, and I thought, well, we really ought to pick this up and run with it and see where we go with it. In truth, where it is now from where it was 3 years ago, which was when we started looking at it, at two hugely different places, it's almost like the situation in Only Fools and Horses, where you change the head of the broom and then you change the broom handle, and that's kind of what we did. We changed one part of it and then we changed another part and then we changed that, and in the end we were left with pretty much nothing from what we were starting off with. Yeah. Especially on the command and control front, there's a very, very different set of rules to Through the Mud and the Blood. So yeah, it really just came from the fact people tapping us on the shoulder and saying, look, we really want to do something with this, can you help us? So that's the way we went.
Right, okay. So obviously Too Fat Lardies already have a platoon level World War II set of rules with troops, weapons and tactics.
Yeah.
Is it one of these things that's going to stay in place and perhaps get a new edition, or is Chain of Command kind of superseding those rules?
I'm not sure that it's superseding it, really. I see it a bit like going into a shoe shop. They've got more than one pair of size 9 shoes. It's just a different style of rules for somebody who prefers, hobnail boots to 6-inch heels. Yeah. They're both size 9 shoes, but they do things in a slightly different way.
Right, okay. You talked about the fact that you've now changed the head of the broom 4 times and the handle 5. Can you take us through some of that process about what your original thoughts behind converting Through the Mud and the Blood to World War II were, and how you've got to where you are now?
Yeah, well, basically the original idea was just to provide people with a set of different statistics for different weapons that were being used. So an MG42 is obviously going to have a greater rate of fire than a Lewis gun.
Yeah.
It really came about when I sat down and reassessed and reevaluated what we were looking for from the command and control mechanism, looked for different ways to put in place the challenges of command. And I was very keen to move away from the idea of a set turn. I was looking far more to create something that was much more fluid, whereby a turn was actually a very significant period of play, but during that there were a number of phases. The order in which things happened were not always predetermined.
Yeah.
It's something that would evolve, because I believe that in reality it isn't a case of one side having a go and then the other side has a go. You're going to get variables in terms of the way initiative happens on the battlefield. Different people are going to do things at different times and in different fashions. And I wanted to create a system whereby we moved away from a fixed turn and we looked at an alternative way of doing things to the cards, which we've used in previous games.
Yeah.
And I thought about the concept of using dice, because it's like so many things. It's what you've got isn't necessarily what you see. For example, I was having a conversation with somebody the other day, and they said to me, it's interesting that bolt action is a card-driven system. And I said, well, I hadn't really thought about it like that. But if you consider the fact that drawing a dice from a cup is no different from drawing a card from a deck of cards to determine the order of the play. And sometimes I thought, wow, that's an interesting way of looking at it. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we need to reconsider the way that we view things, and I was quite intrigued by the way that the card game developed within Dux Britanniarum, and I thought about using dice as an alternative to cards. So basically, by rolling a number of dice, you are getting a number of results between 1 and 6, and that then potentially becomes a hand of cards which you are holding and that you can then play during the immediate phase of what's happening. So it was once we started developing that idea that really we decided that this was definitely going to be not just a tart-up of the World War I rules.
Yeah.
It had a lot more mileage in it, and it's something that as we've developed and gone along with, we've become really quite excited about the changes.
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned, myself and Mike down Lard Island today, we've just had a couple of games and just experienced this dice mechanic in action. I mean, Mike, can I ask your opinion? What were your thoughts on it?
I really liked it. I've always found with some of the card-driven games is you never know what's going to happen next. You turn over a card and you have to act on that one card. But with the dice mechanic, as Rich was saying, it's almost like you've got a hand of cards in your hand that you're holding. So you've got the control that you've got. You have to make the decisions of what you're going to do with those particular dice and when you're going to do them. So it puts the power back to the gamer to use what limited assets that he's got or she's got. Sorry, and I think I just love sets of rules that do that. You can do some stuff. You can't do everything you want to do. Most of the time, you can't do anything you want to do. But it makes you think about what you can do, and it makes you think about the order that you can do things in. It's like, do I move a squad forward now? Do I try and pile in some smoke from a small mortar? Do I bring forward a bit of armoured vehicle or whatever? That is a very clever mechanic, and also the way that by rolling sixes from a roll of 5 dice, if you roll 2 6s, you get to go again straight afterwards, which means you've then got the ability to take the offensive. You can plan your next attack forward a bit. You can try and do something a bit brave or a bit stupid, but you're still not sure what's going to happen after that roll. It was good of you to get in the point that you've won both games within.
Was it the first game where you were brave and the second where you were stupid, or was it the first game where you were stupid and the second where you were brave?
I think it was both turns I was stupid. But yeah, no.
It has to be fair. I think I was somewhat lucky getting into a position of having a line of 3 MG42 teams across the table in fairly short order, which again,
it happened. But you used the dice that you rolled. You were given a small hand of, should we say, cards or whatever. You took the cards in your hand and you played them well.
If you've seen the Too Fat Lardies videos that we're up to, we've probably done even 3, haven't you? Yes. Nick presented the first one on command and control.
No, that's right.
It was the first one
was when we talked about the patrol phase.
Patrol phase, right? Okay. We'll come back to the patrol phase in a second. Let's just finish on command and control first. So that was the second one. Talking about command and control. The interesting thing, for example, is that an awful lot of games of this type, you will have your command and control, which is variant depending on your, like for example, if you have 4 or 5 sections, you will have one command for each section. That is different in this game. You have a set number of dice, 5 in this particular instance. Although apparently that is variable depending on the scenario.
Depending on the troop types.
Right. Okay. And then you can do various things depending on what dice you roll. Rich, do you want to take us through that?
Okay, so let's imagine you've got 5 dice and you roll them. That determines what you're going to be able to do. If you roll a 1, that's going to allow you to activate 1 fire team. So that could be firing a Bren team, for example. If you roll a 2, that's going to allow you to activate a whole rifle section or infantry squad. If you roll a 3, that allows you to activate one of your junior NCOs. So that's typically a corporal who's commanding a section. The important thing about corporals is, yes, they can activate their men to fire in just the same way that the section would fire if it rolled a 2. But the corporal can utilise his influence, use his influence to rally them. If they're starting to look a bit shaky, he can use his influence to get them to assume a more tactical stance, such as going on overwatch to cover an area where an enemy could move from. If you roll a 4, you're going to be able to activate one of your senior leaders. So for a British force, we'd be talking a platoon sergeant or a lieutenant, and they can use their influence in pretty much the same way as the corporal, apart from the fact they've got a greater degree of authority and can use it over all of the various units and subunits within the platoon. So the important thing is that when you roll your hand of cards, it allows you to plan what you are now going to do immediately, and it allows you to string that together in a coordinated way. So, for example, if I've rolled a 1, I can put in fire from my 2-inch mortar. I can then follow that up with another one, which is a blast from my Bren team, and I can then use another 1 to charge in with one of my rifle teams and chuck a couple of grenades along the way if they've got the corporal there to tell them, exactly where he wants the grenades to be chucked. So you can actually say, right, I'm not going to do these things at the same time. This isn't happening simultaneously. I'm actually going to do it one at a time. If I'm pleased with the effect of my mortar fire and my Bren team fire, then I will assault. If I'm not, then maybe I just shoot with my rifle team, or maybe I start skirting round the enemy's position on the flank. But the whole thing is to allow you to use proper fire and movement tactics, historical fire and movement tactics, in a coherent and sensible fashion, but also within the context of a game which is fun to play and enjoyable and easily learnt.
Yeah. And from that context, from what Mike was saying about the gamer's experience, what we hear from other people that played it and we know ourselves is that you do get that feeling that you are juggling a resource, that you have some assets available to you. How you manage those is a decision that you're faced with on the tabletop, and you're faced with the same decision as the guy who you're playing. If you're playing the role of a lieutenant commanding a platoon, when your turn of play comes up and you're rolling those dice, you've got very similar options that this guy's going to have in the real world.
Yeah.
So you're faced with the same sort of command and control challenges, and you can string together or try to string together a passage of play that's going to get your troops to where you need them to be. And the feedback we've had from the guys is very much, what Mike just said about, I feel like I'm juggling my resources. You're not just playing the card that comes up. You're making some informed decisions based on the hand you've got.
Yeah. And of course, at the same time, the chaos which you're famous for, for quoting, the chaos of the battlefield, is represented in the fact of, just when you want to roll those 1s and 2s that you need to order your sections, you don't roll them, and so you've got to go with what you've got, and sometimes you can't do an awful lot. Yeah, as you say, it's making the most of the resources you've got. But the one thing with that, it does mean that this problem that you perhaps get at times, either with an I go, you go situation, or even sometimes playing some card activation, is that the turn order is, well, there isn't a turn, is there? It's very, very back and forth. Although you can plan and do various things, you've got this thing of, as Mike said, about rolling a double 6. So you're going to get the next turn, and then therefore you can forward plan a little bit more. But at the same time, in our experience playing today, we were never really sat doing nothing for more than 5 minutes or so, I would suggest.
No, I would spend most of my time just sweeping figures off the table. But no, the whole phase section is very short. You've got a maximum of 5 things you're going to be doing.
Yeah.
Most of the time, you're going to have a lot less than that because, well, 2/3 of the time, so 2/3 of the dice aren't usable in that phase. They might add to your command dice, or they might allow you to take the initiative for the next phase. So there's only limited stuff that you can do. So it's very short periods of action that you're undertaking. But God, it makes you think. It really does make you think what you can do, and it makes you slow down as well, which is quite an interesting concept with some war games, because you're not moving everything forward. Everything's not going to fire. It really makes you think about what you're going to do. I adore games like that. I adore games that make you think, and games that make you bang your head against the table when things go wrong.
We as part of the playtest process, I ran the game by a friend of mine who was a former British Army platoon commander, and he said at the end of it, "My God, it makes you think." He said it really does present you with the type of decisions that I had to make when I was out there in the field. You can't do everything that you want, so you do the things that you feel are the most important things to do at any point in time. I mean, each phase of play we reckon represents about 10 seconds, so it really is a very brief moment in time. And how many phases of play make up a turn? Well, that's undetermined. A turn can end randomly, which represents a major break in what's happening, but it can also be ended by the players if they have achieved certain objectives that they need to achieve within the game. So that when you talk about turns in Chain of Command, it's really in the same way that you would talk about a half in a game of football or a quarter in the game of American football. This is a very, very substantial period of time. The rest of the game is broken down into these phases, and this phase is mine, the next phase is yours, but it might not be. The next phase could be mine. But because I have to roll 2 out of my 5 dice have to be 6s, if I am going to get the next phase, it means that I've got a maximum of 3 things I can do in this phase. So it's not a case of me having 2 full goes like you would get in a typical game, but it does present me with an opportunity to take the initiative. So if you're in a pillbox up that road 18 inches away, and I'm there in a field with a satchel charge, and I roll 2 6s, and I've rolled a 1 which is going to activate me as a fire team, I'm going to start running up that road with my satchel charge, knowing that the next phase of play is mine. What I don't know is, in the next phase of play, whether I'm going to get to roll a 1, and if I do, I don't know whether I'm going to roll enough on my movement dice to get me within range where I can hurl my satchel through the window of your bunker. But It's the type of game where if you want to seize the initiative, it's a type of game which encourages players to seize the initiative. And it's the type of game where I think that a heroism that you read about, sadly these days, it tends to be in obituaries, but where that heroism can be replicated, but within a sensible context, something where it's not just a sort of a jokey sort of kapow, die Fritz type comic book action.
But also, you do that though with a real risk. You know, and you should know you're taking that risk. Getting up and running down the road with a satchel charge is not a thing that you do lightly.
I've never done it.
No, well...
A satchel, yes.
I've seen photos of you as a school child. So, you know, you do take a risk as a player. You absolutely know that, my God, this could come off and I could take this bunker out, but actually this could also be the end of these guys. And you make that decision with it's a real heavy decision you make. You had it in the game with your tank when you're pushing down the road there.
Very briefly,
it's a great idea.
Let's not mention the tank.
It's a great idea to grasp the initiative and go for it. But by God, you take a risk. So it's a brave thing to do.
Yeah. And also the fact that this game does turn on its head very quickly. And I mean, Neil just had a good run of dice. He was lucky, very, very lucky. I was so unlucky it hurt, but no, it turned the game in a matter of minutes. You know, from me having the upper hand, moving forward as per my plan, suddenly I'm on the back foot and I really can't do anything. So
it's amazing what a single Panzerfaust shot will do, isn't it? I mean,
yes.
Especially when I thought you'd rolled that dice, not dropped it.
Yeah. Well, passing quickly up.
But you see, that was the risk because had it gone the other way, you would have taken. You would have come out with the winner of that particular. So it was a key moment in the action, and it went against you.
Yeah.
But it was hilarious to see the Churchill explode and take out the infantry section stood next to it.
It was funny.
Not from where I was sitting.
Indeed. Because I mean, one of the things with this is that in so many games we find ourselves in a situation where we spend half the evening manoeuvring up to a point where we then have contact. Whereas what you've done in Chain of Command is actually move that on so the game starts at point of contact.
Yeah.
Do you want to go into how you've done that?
Well, we use a patrol mechanism which is carried out at the start of the game, and there are no figures involved. And if you've seen the videos on YouTube, you will have seen how this works. Typically, in an encounter battle, each side will have four patrol markers. Thank you. The word escaped my lips for a minute. You have 4 patrol markers. What happens at the beginning of the game is you determine who goes first, and that's a very simple process. And then the person who's going first moves their first patrol marker from a start-off point. And you can move a patrol marker 12 inches. Yeah. And then your opponent takes a turn to move one of his patrol markers 12 inches. And so you keep moving your patrol markers, always making sure that your patrol markers stay within 12 inches of each other, to the point whereby you start to move around the battlefield into the areas that you wish to be able to deploy into. And then as your patrol markers become closer to those of your opponent, when you get to within 12 inches, each patrol marker becomes locked down. And so we continue to move, or you continue to move your patrol markers, keeping them in this continuous 12-inch chain until everybody's control markers are locked down. And that then becomes a sort of a zone of influence, if you like, that you start the action with. And from there we can determine where the jump-off points are. So really this represents sort of pre-game reconnaissance. It's areas to which you as a commander know you can deploy your troops rapidly and without incident. And it does remove some of the sort of pre-game shenanigans that you can find, moving on from the base edge of a table that can take half the evening in the manoeuvring side.
I think the way to think about the jump-off points which are created by the patrol markers is that they're basically the points that you know that you can deploy your troops to as a platoon commander. You know that you can deploy your troops to those points quickly, effectively and safely. After that, they're going to be more circumspect and more careful about the way they move. Yeah. So that creates a situation where we are playing this on a 6-foot by 4-foot table today, but it tends to create a situation where when the game starts, after we've played our 5-minute patrol marker phase, when the game starts, that our forces are probably 24, 30 inches apart. And they are hopefully in positions where we have aspired to get them into, to launch ourselves off to achieve whatever we have to achieve according to that particular scenario. It's a game in the pre-game patrol phase is a game in its own right, and the more you play it, the more sophisticated it becomes. But the net result is that in terms of getting the game started on the table, that 5 minutes doing the patrol phase thing probably saves us an hour of moving troops on at the start of a game and moving them up towards where the enemy is. And it also puts you in a position whereby you do have elements of hidden movement involved. You can deploy troops onto the table. You can probe towards the enemy. You can send out scouts in small groups, and then make a decision where you want to commit your main force. So it contains an awful lot of positive things that get the game up and running and going very, very quickly. And I think for most of us, we've all got limited time available in our lives, and something that allows us to play the 2 games that we played today. I think we probably played them in total about, probably about 3 hours playing time. So about an hour and a half a game.
I was going to say, I think it's important to sort of come back to these jump-off points, because for me, I think they were one of the key elements of the game. The fact that they stay on the table, these 3 sort of areas that you can move your troops on from, I think I really like that idea, and it just means that you're no longer having to bring your troops on from the table edge, which is what happens in every other rule system. You know, everything that comes up that's off table starts at the table edge and slowly walks forward. In this game, you got stuff that can just literally appear almost from nowhere and start taking an active position in the game, as Neil did with one of his sections of infantry. They just appeared on the flank of my tank and took it out straight away, because they'd obviously worked their way up there slowly in hidden movement.
Just to explain that, because it's not it's not quite what it sounds. They don't just kind of appear in the middle of a field as they puff as if from nowhere. Your jump off points have to be in cover. So effectively, if you like, it's almost like if we were playing another Lardies game, for example, if it was in I Ain't Being Shot Mum, it's effectively it's just like deploying a unit off a blind. So the blind would be behind the hedgerow, except for the fact in this case, obviously, if you're playing I Ain't Being Shot Mum, you've got a clue there's something there because there's a blind there. As far as this game is concerned, there's only a potential to deploy something there, but if you can deploy something, if you have the correct command choices to do that, it means you can deploy a unit behind a hedge and they pop up and fire. And it is a great way of doing something like ambushes without actually having to have a special rule for ambush. It just happens, and it happens naturally, doesn't it?
Well, you certainly read about it in all the accounts of fighting in places like Normandy. Don't get me wrong, the rules aren't just going to cover Normandy, but you hear about it all the time where people are saying, look, all of a sudden the Germans just popped up from behind a hedge and bang. But it isn't a sort of abracadabra teleporting type thing. It's a situation that the jump-off markers are there, and as you approach an enemy's jump-off marker, you are aware, and obviously the more you play a game, the more you get used to this, you need to be aware that there is potential danger in that area. And the best way that we have found that people deal with this is they send forward small units of scouts. And if you get within 4 inches of an enemy's potential jump-off point, it's negated. They can't use it. So by sending scouts forward, you oblige your enemy to either expose himself and face the consequences, or accept the fact that that is not an area where he's going to be deploying troops to, and surrender that to you. Right. And you've also got an option with the jump-off points, is as your troops advance, you've got potential to move those jump-off points forward. So as you conquer ground on the table, the points to which you can deploy your troops safely, quickly and efficiently can be pushed forward.
What would happen if you lost all of your jump-off points in a game? And
You'd be in pretty deep.
You'd be pretty really. I was trying to think of a polite way of answering that, to be quite honest. Well, for a start, your morale would completely collapse and go to the floor, because as part of the forced morale system, losing a jump-off point is a fairly serious thing to do, because you're effectively surrendering the terrain that you have previously owned to the enemy. So it's never going to have a very positive effect. If you lose all of your jump-off points, you can't deploy any troops on the table. But as your force morale drops, actually, during the game, if your force morale drops to a tremendously low point, you will find that you have to hand over one of your jump-off points to the enemy so that they can use it, because that just represents the fact that the area that you are capable of holding is becoming smaller and smaller, because your force obviously is shrinking, which is why your morale is dropping. So it's all about ownership of terrain, which is really what this is all about.
And will that come into the scenarios that you're going to put in place?
Yeah.
Are you going to have sort of specific scenarios in the book, or are you going to sort of point people towards sort of...
I'm very keen to make this a standalone thing, which we are not looking to put out huge numbers of handbooks. The way I would be keen to do it would be to provide a set of rules which covers the whole of the Second World War as generically, but with potential for us to produce small handbooks, if you like, for each nation, so that will provide them with options for giving them what their basic force will be. I mean, for the major nations, this is going to be in the rules. Give them what your basic force is, what support you can draw upon, and then the scenarios will point you to how much support you can have, at what level of support you can have. You then make the choice from the relevant lists. But yeah, I mean, when it comes to things like Romanians, I would want to produce that information in a PDF format that somebody wanting to fight Romanians could download that, and that would give them all their force options, and they can just take that and run with it. But yeah, there would be some general scenarios in the rules, and I'd be looking to then produce more specific historical scenarios, and that's something that we cover very well in our Christmas and summer specials. I mean, they were originally designed in order to provide people with scenarios, and that's precisely where I think that type of thing works well.
I suppose you could add the sort of different eras of World War II and different sort of campaigns by changing the support options that are available to us.
That's right. So if you've got a game taking place in 1944, well, you know, maybe you're going to get a Tiger 2 if it's late 1944, whereas if it's June 1940, you ain't going to be getting a Tiger 2. So the support list will vary depending on what it is, and the infantry platoon may have some variations. So, for example, in 1940, the German infantry platoon will always have the 50mm mortar as part of it. In 1944, it won't, although it will be a support option. You can bring on, if you want to get your 50mm mortar out of stores, well, feel free to do so. But it's probably not the best support weapon in the world in view of the limitations of the German 50mm mortar.
Okay, I mean, we talked a bit about forces, okay, so it seems natural to kind of go into that. It's aimed at a very specific level, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we're looking at supported platoon?
Yeah, platoon plus is probably the corniest way of describing it. Yeah. Every nation will have as its core force the standard infantry platoon for that nation. So Nick at the moment is painting up a platoon of United States infantry. I'm painting up a platoon of United States parachute infantry. Different platoon organisations as it happens, but mine's the standard force for American paras, his is a standard force for American infantry. Then what you would then do is have an option to choose supports from a historically plausible list of supports, not using a points system, but what would tend to happen is I reckon we're going to have 8 A, B, C, D, E, F, G, 7 support levels of support, A to G. And if Nick is attacking my position, the scenario might say you can have your platoon plus support up to level E, in which case he can choose his support up to level E, and if he chooses a support from E, I may have the option to choose a similar size force, and I think, well, I'll have one from D and one from A, so I might choose lesser supports, but I've got a couple of them.
Yeah.
One of them could just be roller barbed wire, which I'm to string across the road, whereas the other one might be a forward observer with a battery of 3-inch mortars off table.
Yeah.
So you will get the opportunity, and depending on the scenario, that will help you make an informed decision about what support you think is going to be appropriate. There are going to be some scenarios where he can have a fantastic amount of stuff, and I probably have very little, and maybe I'm just choosing a roller barbed wire and a sniper to assist my platoon, and that's going to be it.
Yeah.
Which makes it more challenging, but that could be because I'm in a good defensive position and he's got to turf me out of it. So the lists are designed to allow the players to field an historical force, but also to have the enjoyment of choosing and painting up as well a nice small collection of bits and pieces to go with it. I mean, things like a medic is potentially going to be important. We're looking at developing a campaign game around the rules, which is going to allow you to play out a number of scenarios which are linked together. And the thought is that having a medic might not do you much good in this particular game scenario, but it might mean that in the campaign game you're getting your troops back quicker because he's dealing with them just behind the lines rather than them having to go off to further away to get dealt with, so they could be coming back quicker. So how you spend your points is, it might be that you just want to get a couple of guys with a mine detector.
Yeah.
Because I know that Nick constantly deploys minefields all over the bloody table. So I just think it's a low-level option, but just to get a section of engineers to come along with some mine detectors might make my life a lot easier, especially if my other thing that I'm choosing is a Churchill tank. Sorry to remind you of that, Mike.
Don't mention Churchill.
Well, it is interesting. It is interesting. I mean, say in the game we played, Mike had a Churchill tank, and I had a 259.
Yeah, 2509.
2509.
Light half track with a 20mm cannon. Yeah.
And I kind of looked at it initially and went, "Good grief! Mike's got a blooming great big tank lumbering down the road at me," sort of thing. And and here am I firing golf balls at it.
Yeah.
And from that sort of angle, if you looked at it in I suppose does that seem like a fair piece of setup as far as the game is concerned? Some people will kind of go, some people go, hang on a second, I'm a bit behind here, if you like, especially if everything was worked out, the infamous points values or what have you. Yes, okay, elephant in the room, we'll mention points. But in that particular instance, Mike's got a tank, I haven't, and as we've proven, once the tank disappeared, all of a sudden, and then you got a 20mm cannon firing up infantry, and P-18 nowhere near it, because it's across the other end of the table, and the only way is to run across a field covered by MG.
Oh yeah.
It just put a whole different spin, and say, I mean, I must admit, when we first set up, I thought, oh dear, I'm in trouble here. I mean, admittedly, I was a little bit fortunate on a couple of occasions, especially having a drop to 6 and stuff like that. But
Which jammy. But luckily, I'm not bitter.
I think I'm having to buy him an extra pint later. But it does. It highlights that whole situation with a tank's great while you've got it, but as soon as you lose it in that sort of situation.
I was talking to, funnily enough, I was contacted this morning by a guy who is a padre in the Canadian Armed Forces who spends a lot of his time hanging around tanks. And he said to me, having seen a video on YouTube, he said, what I like is the fact that the tanks aren't sort of monstrous dragons. They actually behave like tanks do in reality. They are quite stuttery in the way they operate. They're good at what they're good at, but they're not good at things that they're not good at. And I think the problem I've always felt with the way wargamers tend to view tanks is that they view them as this kind of all-conquering monster that can just drive about and fire at will and destroy everything in sight. When in fact it's a pretty blind monster that can't see very much, and how effective it's going to be is almost questionable. We saw, I mean, initially when you took on the tank, you hit it with a Panzer Shrek round, which didn't knock it out, but it killed the gunner. And the ability to fire the main gun and the coaxial machine gun was severely, just completely reduced, because it would just, in order to have dealt with that, Mike would have had to have really reversed his tank completely out of action, and then look about setting about completely, changing his crew round and doing whatever. And also that it really hit their morale. I mean, they were pretty close to bailing out at that point, before you rolled a lucky 6 and got a Panzer Faust on his side armour, and blew up all his infantry.
I think the nature of the games, though, because we're playing sort of platoon plus size infantry actions, we're generally gaming over a table that's fairly close to terrain. So a tank might not be your best support option in that environment.
No, that's
and
very
what we've
true.
seen in the games that we played is that actually they very often fall foul to infantry with anti-tank weapons.
They're a magnet for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
In a game, by definition, in a game that's platoon plus, you're going to have maybe one tank, because that's the size of the game, and it's everybody with any anti-tank weapon is going to go try and get close to it.
Well, it did kind of happen though.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Or you get desperate things. We played a game last week where the British just dropped mortars all over the tank, just because they simply had nothing else with which to deal with it, and that blinded it and upset it, and in the end the crew bailed out. They just got fed up with it. Oh no, a couple of 6-pounder rounds helped them on their way, to be fair, but it did disorientate them, and it did upset them. And so I like to think that what we're doing in terms of the representation of tanks is that they're not all conquering monsters. They are something that you can actively go out with a Piat and hunt, in the same way as you read about in so many accounts. Of course, the problem then comes if they've got any infantry with them, in which case the infantry will hunt you and your Piat, and
they become support weapons. Really, they are. Their nature is to support.
That's right.
And once they're out in front, they become very exposed.
Yeah. That really sums it up.
Yeah, and it's interesting from that point of view that actually from a game perspective, the more fun options would sometimes to be looking at taking things like reconnaissance sections and that sort of stuff, which are, especially in a lot of games, kind of the forgotten elements, aren't they? They're the bits of, we don't want to worry about those because they're the things that easily get knocked out whenever you're playing the game, and so people don't tend to have them, and yet they seem to be the best option. I mean, like, for example, we were discussing in this second action about Mike losing his tank, and actually the stupid thing is...
Are we still talking about the tank?
It's getting a confidence now.
Okay, last time I promise. And then we'll start talking about the farmhouse. But we were actually thinking that the crazy thing is, in the situation that Mike was in, we were actually wondering whether the better option would have been to take, for example, a couple of M3A1 half tracks and the 50 cals on the half tracks would have been better off in the situation we were in than using a tank. And yet that's not a natural decision that the average gamer would take. The average gamer would say, I want a tank. Yeah. Which does, I think, make things really interesting and turn stuff on its head a bit.
Well, if you just think about what we were talking about with the jump-off markers and the fact that if you get within 4 inches, you deny the enemy, you get yourself a couple of 250 German Recce half-tracks. You whiz them down the table in a coup de main and nick one of your opponent's jump-off points. That's a major mini victory within the start of that game. If nothing else, you use those 2 half-tracks to whiz about the table and draw the enemy's fire. Your enemy has deployed all his troops before you've decided where you're going to deploy yours. Now that gives you a huge advantage. A tank couldn't do that. It just couldn't do that in the same way. It wouldn't be as fast, it wouldn't be as efficient, it wouldn't draw fire because people would go, not go near that. So it is the smaller options that, I mean, a couple of universal carriers to do the same job for the British. You know, they are fast, they're very efficient. It's stuff that you don't always think of. As you say, I mean, the .50 caliber is a phenomenally powerful weapon in this type of game.
Yeah.
And psychologically, people tend to think slightly differently about the way they use a half-track with a .50 caliber. They are more cautious. They don't whiz it down the road and let it get blown up. They tend to sit it back and use it as a support weapon, which is exactly how you should use things in this game, because by definition they are supports for your infantry platoon.
Which is what we're saying about the tanks. You know,
that's right.
I mean, tanks, you know, the tank is a very powerful battlefield weapon. If you use it well on the tabletop in concert with your infantry, it's going to make you very, very hard to beat.
Yeah.
You know, so the tank, by all means, it's not a game of half tracks, because the tank has a very valuable role to play in it. But, you know, it's just using your assets the best way you can, as wisely as you can.
Yeah.
And it makes you realise why these things happen the way they did historically. And there's a reason why tanks and infantry develop very good tactics for working together, because it's the only way to win.
Yeah.
You know? So what we're trying to do is replicate that on the tabletop.
Yeah, I mean, I think with my tank, I only actually use the machine gun in it. And that was my idea, was just to sweep the machine gun whilst I got my infantry forward. It didn't work out that way.
I thought you were using the machine gun because your gunner was dead.
That was the other reason. But
Yeah. But no, that's right. And you, I mean, there's a big book over there, Panzer Tactics, and if you look at that, it's got some of the stuff from the training manuals for the German tankers, and it says when to use your machine gun and when to use your main gun. And when you're fighting against infantry, which you were, the majority of the time they say use your machine guns, don't fire your main gun, because it's better at killing people. So
We've looked at how deployment works, and we've looked at the forces involved. We've talked about, obviously about command and control. I think that's kind of covered it as far as a lot of the game is concerned, where we are at the moment. I mean, obviously, from talking throughout the day, it's we're still in kind of playtest development sort of.
Yeah, we're well advanced in that. I mean, I think one of the key things that I would point out is the fact that the basic mechanisms of movement and firing have been kept very, very simple, so that they become second nature very, very quickly. That allows you to concentrate not on plus this, plus that, minus this, minus that, looking up, huge lists of modifiers. It allows you to concentrate on making those command decisions that are realistic. So you guys have played through a couple of games today, and very rapidly in the first game, it becomes obvious what you need to roll to hit, obvious what you need to roll to kill. So those things are very, very simple, and I think I'm increasingly coming to the conclusion with any rule design that you try and keep things as streamlined as possible, so that hopefully they become invisible to a degree, and then that allows people to focus on the important bits, which are the command decision bits, because I think that's what really makes a game. But where are the rules? Well, we've got it being play tested all over the world. We have a very large number of play testers in Scandinavia and Sweden in particular, who'd been dabbling with this right the way through since 2010. They were the guys who were very keen to develop it from mud and blood. So they'd been on board all the time, and when we picked this up and started running with it again, we'd already got a small discussion group set up, which they were part of. So they naturally picked up the baton and were very enthusiastic and very helpful. We've now gone out to a stage where it's being play tested generally by gamers all around the world, and so we're getting response back from that now. And the rules have gone from 4 pages up to, I think it's 32 pages at the moment. So it's start to bulk out, not because things are getting more complicated, but of course you have to cover every eventuality, because people expect every eventuality to be covered in the rules. So if you are trying to drive off a Panther tank with your Bren, we've now got rules to try and do that. Good luck to you. It probably won't do you much good. But nevertheless, things like that are now covered in the rules, and you running up with a telemine and chucking it on the tracks of a T-34, that is now covered in the rules. So it's the rules are now, as I say, at the stage of advanced playtest, and we expect to have them in production this summer.
Right.
He said vaguely, when does summer begin and end? But, yeah.
Well, okay, so that's next week then. So considering we just started British summertime, right?
Yeah, well, that's why I was being a bit vague there. But I would have anticipated July.
Yeah.
I would have thought.
Are you going to offer them as a hard copy?
Yep, hard copy and PDF. And we'll be doing a tablet edition.
Yeah.
So thanks to Nick, who does all the technology on that. My technology ends up rubbing two sticks together to try and make a fire to keep the mammoths away. But that's about as far as my technology goes.
What about things like the markers that you use for doing the first phase? Little markers for doing the jump
patrol
up
markers.
Yeah.
You've got patrol markers, and you've got things like tactical things and the Overwatch markers.
That's an interesting one, actually. The patrol markers that I use are 1/48 scale Tamiya stuff, which are nearly perfect fit, really, with the style, the size we're doing. I've just used sort of things like oil drums and jerry cans and bits of old bric-a-brac and whatever, and stuck them on. I think they're 40mm washers. But I was thinking about getting some sculpted and done in resin.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Which might be quite nice to do.
Knocked out civilian vehicles and things. Nice idea.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I have no idea who would sculpt them or who would cast them in resin, but I'm sure I could find out. But yeah, so but that's something that I was thinking might be quite nice, and I think we're going to need a few markers. I mean, putting troops on Overwatch, getting them to move tactically, units that are pinned.
I mean, I like that idea, like, just as a throwaway thing, when we're looking at Overwatch, this thing you've got with there's an Overwatch counter which gave a field of fire on the Overwatch, which is something you don't normally tend to think about a tremendous amount.
No.
And all of a sudden it was like, oh, hang on a second.
But if you're a platoon officer, you don't say, Jones, on the Bren gun, go on Overwatch. You tell him where he's going to watch on Overwatch. So in this, infantry sections don't put themselves on Overwatch. Their NCOs tell them where they are to go on Overwatch. Otherwise, it's not a 360-degree capability. I haven't actually worked out what the degrees are on this, but I think we've got it at about 100 degrees, which is rubbish, really. It's not really the most convenient thing to have, but I mean, but maybe 120 degrees.
Yeah.
I think it probably is more like 120 on the marker.
Yeah, fine. Well, in that case, that's probably the type of thing. So it's just a small marker that shows that they're on Overwatch. Because whilst we have these multiple phases that go on and on and on to make up a turn, you can be on Overwatch for multiple phases. So if I have an NCO who puts his Bren on Overwatch, that Bren will stay there on Overwatch until the end of the turn, or until you're daft enough to walk through that field, and then he'll shoot you. So there's going to be room for a few markers, but I think the thing that I'm in two minds about is to whether to go full colour or whether to go back to black and white.
Yeah.
And to look at doing it in a comic book style. A sort of Warlord, Commando, Boy's Own picture library type thing. But I don't know about that.
We should obviously suit that, going back to black and white. Colour cover, black and white.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
So that's just a look that I think might work for this. Yeah. Just that Boy's Own type thing.
Yeah, because it does kind of describe the game. Because as we were playing, it's one of those classic things of the histories evolved in the game mechanics to the point where you're performing things historically without thinking about it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you've still got those heroic actions you can make.
Yeah.
Those comic book things that you can potentially do.
Yeah.
And so that kind of fits in that whole style, doesn't it?
Well, we did that with Bag the Hun to a degree, where we produced the rules with a cover which is reminiscent of that, and then a lot of the illustrations in there were done with very much that type of thing. Although the layout of the rules is more modern. Some of the illustrations were very much the comic book thing, and you have what's his name? What was his name?
Johnny Danger.
Johnny Danger, Squadron Leader Johnny Danger, talks you through all the bits and pieces. There he is. Now I like the idea of taking drawings like that and then producing it in more of a sort of comic strip.
Oh, okay.
So you walk through the actions, walk through the examples with a comic strip showing you what's going on.
Yeah.
Quite whether I'm capable of drawing them all to that degree of professionalism, I don't know, but I'll have a go.
By July.
By July, yeah.
Oh, so it could be.
Yeah. But
could be the return of Hugh Jarson.
no. I get
Churchill.
Yeah, I get so much flack for Hugh Jas. I don't know. I think he's retired to Eastbourne, play golf or something. But he certainly is a hate figure in some areas, which is always I find quite hilarious, to be honest with you. But there we are. I shouldn't laugh, actually.
Despite the fact he was a popular miniature.
Very popular, yeah, very popular miniature. Yeah.
So, we're into final playtesting or what have you. Are you touring the UK shows this year?
Am I touring the UK shows? UK shows and clubs, yeah, the Lard tour bus. It's like status quo on a bad day. But, yeah.
Yeah, I did receive an email from somebody the other week saying, come and see us at, what was it, Operation Market Larden or something. Yes, as you say,
good one.
It appears you're...
Really?
Yeah, seriously.
I've not heard of that. Apparently I'm even appearing in places I've never heard of. I've got... I'm going to Huntingdon next week to show the game off to their club. I was up... We're in Salute in a couple of weeks. Evesham. I'm going up to Edinburgh in June and Evesham. I'm in Belfast, hopefully in August. So we're going round here, there, and everywhere. Really, I mean, I've already been to. Came down to Penarth, and that was the first time the game went on display in January.
Yeah.
And that was really well received. The hilarious thing there was that I had everything just scribbled out in notes, and I hadn't typed the rules up at all. So I only typed the rules up the day before we went down to Penarth to do the game. So it really was skin of the teeth. And but the good thing is that the play sheet that we ran the game from on that day hasn't changed at all.
Right.
So the mechanisms that we felt were right have remained in place, the core mechanisms, and that's really helped, and it's actually taken on a life of its own, because I was planning to be working on Algae, our World War I aerial rules, to get them out first, but Chain of Command has just taken on this sort of, it's like a huge rock going down a mountain, it's kind of developed its own unstoppable impetus, and when it's going like that, you just have to jump on and go with it. So we are taking it around the shows. We've got a demonstration game on at Salute, which we have got advertised in the Salute thing where you go through the door. What's it called? Program or whatever. Yeah, right, that's the one. So your usherette will be providing you with details of that when you sign in at Salute. So have a look in the back. I think the advert's near the back, and it tells you what table we're on. Had I prepared myself, I would have that information to hand. I have not. We're over there. We're over near the back in a corner, I think.
just use your ears. It'll be a noisy bit.
Yeah.
As per usual.
Yeah. So, so I'm sure we are going to be hugely oversubscribed to that. We normally are. But we'll have a laugh. The best time to catch me is before 4 o'clock in the afternoon, when I'll be at death's door. But it should be good fun. Really looking forward to it, actually.
So you mentioned Algae. I know that is something that appears to have taken on a life of its own, because it seemed that you were suddenly having to bounce a pressure on the Yahoo group.
I've wanted to redo Algae for so long, and what happened was the Shapeways planes came on the scene, where they do these plastic printed blah 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 whatever clever 3D technical machine I don't understand. and somebody said, "Oh, you've got to get some of these." So I thought, I'll get some of them. So I got half a dozen, and then before they arrived, I'd ordered another dozen, and then when the first half a dozen arrived, I ordered another dozen, and so the sort of numbers were. And so I've got more planes than the Kaiser on my shelves at the moment, which are in various states of undercoat and paintings. But algae is completely changing again. Rather than just redo it, we decided to completely reassess what we were going to do, and we're producing a hexless version of algae.
Oh, right, fab.
And so Algernon pulls it off again is going to be the name of the rules, which will upset many people, I'm sure. But they'll be a damn good set of rules and jolly good fun. I mean, ultimately, if you can't produce a set of rules for biggles and algae and have your tongue somewhat in your cheek, I think there's something wrong with the world.
Just one. I mean, you mentioned, you're going to completely rewrite the way algae works.
Yeah.
I mean, having worked on the dice mechanics and stuff for COC, has that changed the way? Has that changed your thinking on the way on things like card mechanics and stuff? Or?
No, because I see the dice in Chain of Command to be an extension of the cards. It's just it's almost an extension of Ducks, whereby it's a hand of cards that you can play, albeit you're playing your hand during the phase, but there's still an order, there's still a sequence. I'm going to play that and then that and then that, because that is maximising the first two, maximise the chance of the third one having a positive effect. So I see the dice as just an extension of cards. I just think it's never good to stand still. I think you're either going forward or you're going backwards in life, and we like to think that there's still a few tricks up there that we can do.
We still find time to do some silly little different games that
never see the light of day.
That never see the light of day, but give us a chance to try out some of the basic techniques that we might use in a bigger rule set. So we did a gladiator game where some of the sort of dice rolls that I can recognise in Chain of Command. I remember them coming out of some of those silly games that we played. So the mechanism sort of gives us an opportunity to try something completely different. And what are you laughing for?
The Chain of Command dice was taken from a game, Nick's Gladiator game that we just messed about with. And if you accumulated 6 points, your Gladiator had balls of steel. Well,
the idea being that you need to have balls of steel to get off your arse in the arena and fight someone. So that, and the bigger man you were, the tougher you became, the more you had balls of steel, the more you were going to walk over to your opponent and crush him. It was all about gaining balls of steel. This whole game was about building.
Which is why we never published it.
I think there's still mileage.
But it's that type of thing. You have to be prepared to do some blue sky thinking and reevaluate, not just reevaluate what you've done, but try and look at totally different things. And we've along the way, there's been a lot of rules that never got anywhere near production, but that have still been fun to do and interesting and eye-opening. War rules we've discussed before, whether they ever get produced, God only knows. But it was still a worthwhile exercise in terms of presenting some opportunities to look at things differently.
Yeah, a lot of them come from the Christmas games that we've done. Just or demonstration games where they just be, for a bit of a laugh, really. Yeah. But then the mechanism, you think, hang on a minute, there's something in here that we can apply. Yeah. And that's got real mileage. So. Yeah,
Mrs. Slocum
keep coming up with those.
Mrs. Slocum and the Space Nazis was one of our best Christmas games. Yeah, I don't know what we gained from that, but it was a good game.
Very good for the blood pressure.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I'm actually going to take some ideas from that when I do Space Pixies from Beyond Uranus.
Yes. So that is going ahead, is it?
Yeah, we'll do it, and it's going to use the mechanism from Chain of Command.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I'm really looking forward to that. Got some really good characters. He's painting some fantastic stuff for it. I wouldn't dirty my hands with painting such nonsense.
Now you mentioned ducks, and I know you've been toying around with different fractions.
Yes, and the great news is that we've okayed the artwork for the Raiders supplement, so that is being done at the moment. So that's going to be all the Kelto fun guys, like the Picts, the Scot and the Irish, so that's been done. So it's slightly behind where we wanted to be on schedule with that, but I honestly think that if you're going to develop a set of rules, it's almost a sort of organic process, and you have to allow it to be an organic process, and you can't rush it and say, I'm going to achieve this by a certain date, which is why I say things like summer and Easter, because they're as vague as I can possibly be. But it's important to allow the process to develop naturally, and if it's not ready, don't run with it. In this case, the rules are ready, but it's just been the artwork. But at the same time, if the artist needs time to get it done, and then the artist needs time to get it done. Mm-hmm. So that's when's that going to be out? I don't know. I'm waiting for the artwork, but the artwork is fantastic, really good. Lots of Ogham and all sorts of Celtic sort of animals and bits and pieces, and Zed rods and things like that. And that's great fun. That is fantastic. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking forward to them coming along. So they will be this summer.
Excellent. Busy summer then.
As will algae, probably. I honestly, it will be a long summer, yeah. But yeah, no. So that's going to be good. That's going to be good. I don't know. After that, I've got. What are you thinking about, Skinner? What have you got up your sleeve?
Well, we've got Balls of Steel, which has always got good mileage in it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, gladiator games are the in thing at the moment. Yeah. There's an awful lot of them around.
Yeah, well, we're good at publishing things that aren't the in thing. So that's probably why spoil an unbroken run?
We're still working on a sort of the Napoleonic naval supplement for sharp practice.
Yeah.
Still that in the...
I'd really like to do... There's been a lot of stuff on the internet recently, like things like War of the Roses, sharp practice. I'd really like to do, in a way, redo sharp practice, dragging together lots of people's different ideas. You know what they did in Black Powder, where they here's the basic rules, and then in the back you go, here's how we did it for the American War of Independence. Here's how we did it for the War of Spanish Succession or whatever. Yeah. You think, actually... that might be a really nice way to present sharp practice, because everybody thinks, sharp practice, Napoleonic. No, sharp practice, anything where people...
It's a Black Powder game.
It's a Black Powder game, yeah. It's very general. And the fact that people are using it for War of the Roses is... We actually we officially opened Lard Island
3 weeks ago.
3 weeks ago. And the game that we played was War of the Roses with sharp practice. And then we played Chain of Command. We got 2 games in that day as well. And you think that would be something good to do, but then that's for the future. So, yeah. As always, a somewhat chaotic schedule, which we won't stick to.
Well, guys, it's been fantastic to be here today. Thank you very much for inviting us.
Very good of you to come, and it's great to see you win 2 games, and it's also fantastic to see proof that you lie about how bad your dice rolling is, and in fact, it's exceptional.
I will never live this down.
Yeah. You can see a photo of Neil rolling 60s. It's on our Facebook page.
Yeah.
Well, I will point Mr. If Dave Luff is listening to this, or Dave, I will point you in the direction of that photo just to prove that I can roll 60s from time to time. As I say, thanks guys for it's been tremendous fun being down for the day.
Pleasure.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah, great.
It's been great to chat.
The eagles have gone. Britain lies defenceless in a cruel world. Since the birth of our Lord, it has been 456 years. What sins have we committed to bring this punishment to Britain? I speak, of course, of the Saxons. They came as allies, but now they seek conquest. The lands of the Britons lie ravaged before them. Blood runs red in our island. We need a leader to stand against them. We need a man to bring together the Britons in common cause. We seek a Dux Britanniarum.
Right, that's enough of that. Dux Britanniarum from Too Fat Lardies. They really are very good.
The Meeples and Miniatures podcast is very happy to be sponsored by Coat d'Arms Paints. Now, Coat d'Arms have been supporting miniatures painters with their products for well over 20 years in some way, shape or form. Their current range is 150 sets of acrylic paint, which are available both as individual colours, but also in paint sets depending on period. Things such as the Ancients paint set, the World War II German, World War II American, World War II Russian paint sets, and they also include things like an ACW set and even a Horsetown set. That's one way to purchase your paints. And they also do triads. Now, if you're a fan of the 3-colour system made famous by the likes of people like Kevin Dallimore, you may like to purchase your paints with a dark shade, a medium shade and a highlight. And the triad system from Coat d'Arms allows you to do this. They also have ranges of textured paints called Brushscape, which allow you to paint from textures onto bases as well as colour. And these are ideal especially for smaller scale models. And if you're a fan of the dip method of painting, then Coat d'Arms have their own product available called Super Shader. This is available in light brown, dark brown and black. Coat d'Arms Paints have a whole range of products available to try. Check them out at www.blackhat.co.uk and be sure to tell them that we sent you. Well, I hope you enjoyed that interview. Just wanted to say a huge thank you once again to Rich and Nick for inviting us down for the day and showing us all about Chain of Command. Now, I was going to put another kind of a debrief that myself and Mike have recorded on the back of the show at this point. However, we were talking for a bit longer than what I originally anticipated, and so that you don't have to listen to a couple of hours of show, then what I'll be doing, I'll be putting it out as a separate podcast in a few days' time. So until then, I'll just say a quick au revoir. As always, happy gaming, take care, and I'll speak to you again in a few days' time. Bye. Thank you for listening to the Meeples and Miniatures podcast. If you want to know more about Meeples and Miniatures, there are several things you can do. First of all, you can visit the website at www.meeplesandminiatures.co.uk. If you want to contact the show at all, you can email me at neil@meeplesandminiatures.co.uk. You can follow the show on Twitter. Simply look for M&M Podcast, or click the follow us on Twitter button from the website. We also have a group on Facebook. That's the Meeples and Miniatures Podcast Fan Club. Again, follow the link from the website. And finally, if you want to help us to support the show, you can always donate to the podcast by clicking the PayPal button on the donate page, again found on the website. Once again, thank you for listening. I hope you've really enjoyed the show. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon.